The first impact was the hardest. Evelyn hit the ground like a broken doll, her ribs shuddering with pain. The VA soldiers surrounding her, tall, reptilian, clad in dark alloy armor, laughed in their guttural tongue. One of them, a massive brute with jagged tusks curling from his lower jaw, nudged her with a boot, rolling her onto her back. She didn't even try to fight. One of them scoffed. Pathetic. The commander, Krozeth, crouched beside her, his predatory gaze sweeping over her bloodied face. His skin, dark as obsidian, shimmered under the moonlight of the hunting world they had brought her to. He grinned, a slow, deliberate baring of needle-like teeth. She's still breathing. Good. His voice was a deep rumble of amusement. They call this a soldier? What a waste. We should have taken her as a breeder instead of prey. Evelyn barely reacted. She had heard worse, endured worse. The pain in her ribs told her at least one was cracked, maybe two. She focused on her breath, slow and steady. Fear was useless. Panic was death. Krozeth stood and turned to his warriors. You know the rules. Give her a sporting chance. Let her run. He kicked a rifle across the dirt toward her. A single weapon. No armor. No comms. You last until dawn, you win. The laughter continued, deep and cruel. Evelyn remained still. She could feel their eyes on her, expecting her to scramble for the rifle, to bolt like prey. She didn't. One of them, smaller than the rest but still towering over her, snorted. Maybe she doesn't understand. Evelyn's fingers twitched. Just a little longer. Just a little closer. Krozeth sighed theatrically and turned away. Kill her, she bores you. That was the moment Evelyn moved. Her hand shot out, seizing a fistful of dirt and hurling it into the closest Vieshar's eyes. The alien roared, stumbling back. She surged forward, grabbing the rifle, rolling into a crouch, and firing point-blank into his throat. The shot blasted through flesh and cartilage, and the alien crumpled, choking on black blood. The laughter stopped. Krozeth's head snapped around, eyes narrowing. The remaining warriors froze in surprise, their weapons still slung over their shoulders. For a split second, the galaxy's so-called apex predators were caught off guard by a creature they thought too weak to fight back. Evelyn didn't hesitate. She sprinted, zigzagging through the clearing, disappearing into the jungle before they could react. The sound of Krozeth's furious roar followed her into the darkness. Find her. Tear her apart. Branches slashed at her arms as she ran. The humid air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the metallic tang of alien blood. Her breath came sharp and shallow, her pulse hammering in her ears. She had seconds, before they regrouped and came for her. She veered left, plunging into the undergrowth, pressing her body low. A moment later, the jungle erupted with energy blasts, scorching through the trees where she had been. They were shooting wildly now, furious, reckless. That was good. Angry enemies made mistakes. She needed distance, needed time to think. The hunting world was vast, chosen for its dense terrain and hostile wildlife. Jagged cliffs loomed in the distance, shrouded in mist. Rivers carved through the landscape, swollen from recent storms. There were ruins too, old human structures from a failed colony, abandoned for decades. That's where she needed to go. The Vieshar weren't worried yet. She could hear them, shouting, spreading out, trying to corner her. They didn't see her as a threat, not really. They still thought this was a game. Good. Let them think that. She moved fast, weaving through the foliage, her instincts razor-sharp. Her rifle had only a handful of shots left. She needed to make them count. She needed to become something they feared. The ruins emerged through the trees, twisted metal, shattered glass, the bones of a lost human outpost. Evelyn slid into the shadows, forcing her breath to steady. The place was dead silent, save for the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. She crouched, listening. The Vieshar were coming. She could hear their heavy footfalls, their snarls of frustration. "She won't last long," one grumbled. "The animals will take her if we don't. She's already dead," another sneered. "She just doesn't know it yet." Evelyn's grip tightened on the rifle. No, she wasn't dead. They were. She moved like a wraith through the wreckage, searching for anything useful. Her fingers brushed against rusted metal, shattered equipment, then something solid. A combat knife. Still sharp. Still deadly. Footsteps neared. One of the VA Shar had broken from the others, stalking alone. Arrogant. Careless. She waited, muscles coiled. A shadow passed over the doorway. The alien hesitated, scanning the darkness. Evelyn struck. She lunged, slamming the knife up beneath his jaw. The VA Shar convulsed, a wet gurgle escaping his throat as the blade punched through soft tissue and into his brain. She wrenched it free, catching his body as it slumped. No sound, no alarm, just the slow drip of blood pooling at her feet. She dragged the corpse deeper into the ruins, working quickly. The first kill was instinct. The second was strategy. Minutes later, she vanished into the jungle once more, leaving behind a grotesque message. The VA Shar's severed head impaled on a metal rod, its lifeless eyes staring toward the approaching hunters. When the others found it, she wanted them to feel what she had felt. Fear. She crouched in the shadows, watching as the VA Shar closed in on the ruins, watching as their amusement twisted into confusion, then unease. They weren't laughing anymore, and that was just the beginning. The jungle was no longer just a place to hide. It was her weapon. Evelyn moved through it like a shadow, her breath measured, her steps deliberate. Every snapped twig, every rustling leaf, every distant howl of some unseen predator could mean the difference between survival and death. The VA Shar were hunting her, but they were doing it all wrong. They were loud, overconfident, arrogant. She could hear them trampling through the undergrowth, snarling in frustration, weapons humming with charged energy. They weren't used to losing control of a hunt. They weren't used to fear. Evelyn crouched behind a thick root system, pressing her back to the damp bark of a twisted tree. Moonlight speared through the canopy, casting jagged shadows across the jungle floor. In the distance, she could see the ruins, her only real chance of making it through the night. But getting there wasn't going to be easy. A VA Shar warrior stalked into view, his rifle sweeping the trees. His dark armor gleamed under the pale light, and his reptilian eyes flickered with irritation. Alone. That was a mistake. Evelyn moved fast. She lunged from the shadows, a blur of motion. Before the alien could react, she grabbed the barrel of his rifle and yanked it aside, his shot blasting harmlessly into the dirt. Her knife found his throat in the same breath. A wet gurgle, a spray of thick, black blood. His body crumpled before he could even scream. She dragged him into the underbrush, wiping her blade clean on his tattered combat harness. 2 down. The others would find the corpse soon. They'd grow cautious. They'd adapt, but not fast enough. A distant roar split the night air. Something large, something hunting. Not her. Not yet. The jungle was full of things deadlier than the VA Shar, and if she played this right, she wouldn't have to kill them all herself. She moved again, staying low, using the sounds of the jungle to mask her steps. Another voice echoed through the trees, sharp with irritation. "Another one's dead." A VA Shar soldier growled. Krozeth's response was cold. "Then find her. Kill her. I don't care how." Their patience was breaking. That was good. That was very good. Evelyn reached the ruins. The jagged skeleton of an old human outpost loomed ahead, half swallowed by nature. Vines strangled rusted beams. Shattered glass crunched beneath her boots as she stepped inside. The place smelled of decay, of time, but it was still human. Her fingers brushed against the crumbling walls, remembering. The last time she had been here, this place had been alive. Now it was nothing but a graveyard. She moved deeper, past remnants of old barricades, rusted supply crates. Then she found what she was looking for, a generator. Ancient, half buried under debris, but intact. A plan began to form, a cruel one. She worked quickly, ripping apart the panels, her fingers moving with practiced efficiency. The battery was still there, still stable. She pulled it free, wrapping stripped wires around it, turning it into something it was never meant to be. A crude, desperate explosive. The sound of approaching footsteps sent a surge of adrenaline through her veins. She placed the device at the center of the room, rigging it to a pressure plate made from shattered metal plating. One wrong step and she slipped into the shadows just as the first VA Shar entered. 3 of them, armed, focused. Their sharp eyes scanned the darkness, sniffing the air. Evelyn remained perfectly still, watching as they advanced. One of them stepped toward the device. Evelyn turned away, just as the explosion tore through the ruins. The blast wasn't enough to kill all of them, but it sent them reeling, their armor scorched, their weapons thrown from their hands. Smoke and dust filled the air. She struck while they were dazed. The first went down with a single shot to the head. The second turned, roaring, swinging a blade toward her. She ducked, driving her knife up into his gut, twisting it deep before wrenching it free. The third was faster. He slammed into her, sending her crashing against the crumbling wall. Pain exploded through her ribs, stealing her breath. His claws raked across her shoulder, tearing fabric, drawing blood. Evelyn gritted her teeth. Not today. She drove her knee into his gut, grabbed his arm, and twisted. Bone snapped. He howled. She took his own blade and buried it in his throat. Then there was silence. She staggered back, wiping blood from her face. Her body screamed in protest, but she didn't stop moving. She couldn't. The ruins were compromised now. Krozeth would have heard the explosion. He would come himself. She had to be ready. The jungle was restless. Smoke from the explosion still curled into the night air, mixing with the damp scent of soil and decay. Evelyn crouched in the shadows of the ruins, her breath steady despite the fire burning in her ribs. Blood soaked the fabric of her sleeve, warm against her skin. Some of it was hers. Most of it wasn't. The VA Shar were closing in. She could hear them, moving with greater caution now, no longer stomping through the underbrush like arrogant predators. The bodies she had left behind were forcing them to rethink their confidence. That was the first step, a flicker of movement. She pressed herself lower against the shattered remains of a concrete wall, watching as a squad of 4 approached. Their weapons were drawn, their slit-like pupils dilated, scanning the darkness for any sign of her. They wouldn't find her, not until she wanted them to. One of them turned his head, mandibles clicking in agitation. She's leading us into a trap. Krozeth's voice crackled over their communicators, cold and sharp. I don't care. She dies tonight. Evelyn smiled grimly. We'll see about that. She moved fast. A flick of her wrist sent a jagged shard of debris hurtling through the air, striking one of the soldiers in the throat. He made a strangled noise, stumbling forward before collapsing into the undergrowth. The others reacted instantly, their rifles sweeping toward the source of the attack. Too late. She was already behind them. Evelyn fired twice. The first shot hit the nearest VA Shar on the side of the head, sending a spray of black blood across the trees. The second found another's chest, puncturing his armor, dropping him before he could scream. The last one turned on her with a snarl, swinging the butt of his rifle. Evelyn twisted, the strike barely missing her. She stepped inside his reach, driving her elbow into his throat. He choked, staggering back, claws slashing wildly. She grabbed his own knife from his belt and rammed it into his eye socket. Silence followed. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, her fingers trembling from adrenaline. She had to keep moving. Krozeth wouldn't wait forever. He'd be coming himself soon, and that was exactly what she wanted. The ruins were no longer safe. She slipped back into the jungle, vanishing into the thick foliage, her mind racing. She needed an advantage, a final advantage, and she knew exactly where to find it. The crash site. She had seen it on her first night in the jungle, a downed human supply ship, half buried beneath the canopy. The VA Shar hadn't scavenged it. Too remote, too unimportant. But she knew what was inside. Her body ached, exhaustion clawing at her limbs. But she pushed forward, weaving through the underbrush like a ghost. The jungle was alive with the sounds of distant predators, the whisper of wind through twisted branches. Then she saw it. The wreckage loomed ahead, its metal frame twisted from impact, vines curling around its surface like nature itself was trying to claim it. The hull was breached, the interior dark, silent. She slipped inside, moving carefully. The smell of burned circuits and rusted metal filled her lungs. She stepped over broken crates, her eyes scanning for one thing, the weapons cache. There. She pried the container open, her fingers shaking as she unlatched the lid. Inside, neatly packed despite the crash, were exactly what she needed. Explosives. She let out a slow breath. This was it. A sound outside made her freeze. Footsteps. Not VA Shar. Something bigger. Evelyn pressed herself against the cold metal of the wreckage, peering through a jagged hole in the hull. A shape moved through the trees. Massive, slow, its thick hide rippling under the moonlight. A predator. It hadn't noticed her yet, but it would. And if she played her cards right, her fingers curled around one of the explosives. A plan began to form, brutal and efficient. She stepped outside, slow, deliberate. The beast lifted its head, nostrils flaring. It was all muscle and teeth, its eyes gleaming with primal hunger. It had no loyalty to the VA Shar. She raised the explosive, setting the timer. 5 seconds. Then she threw it. The device landed between the creature and the trees, just as a group of VA Shar soldiers emerged from the brush. The explosion was deafening, shaking the ground, sending flames roaring into the night. The beast snapped. It lunged, eyes burning with fury, charging into the squad with bone-crushing force. Evelyn didn't stay to watch. She moved. Fast. Krozeth was waiting. And now, she was ready for him. Krozeth stood at the edge of the jungle ruins, his expression unreadable beneath the dark metal of his war helm. The bodies of his soldiers littered the ground, limbs twisted, weapons abandoned, their blood soaking into the hungry earth. This was no battlefield. This was a slaughter. He tightened his grip on his rifle, mandibles flaring in barely restrained fury. One human. That was all it had taken to unravel his squad, to turn an elite hunting party into prey. He had underestimated her. They all had. Not anymore. A crack echoed through the trees. He turned sharply, eyes narrowing. The jungle was breathing around him, alive with movement. His remaining soldiers moved cautiously at his flank, weapons raised, their once unshakable arrogance now replaced with unease. "She's close," one of them muttered. Krozeth didn't respond. He could feel it too. The jungle had fallen into a terrible, waiting silence. She was here, watching. A rustle. A shadow flickered through the trees. Then a body dropped from the canopy, landing in a heap at his feet. One of his warriors, his throat sliced clean through. A message. Then the voice. Low, steady, human. "You're not hunters anymore." The whisper slithered through the darkness, wrapping around them like a vice. She wanted them to hear. She wanted them to be afraid. Krozeth fired blindly into the trees. The plasma shot sizzled through the air, striking nothing. Another rustle. A flicker of movement. He turned, but too slow. A knife buried itself into the soldier at his side, puncturing his chest plate. The VA Shar choked, gurgling, before crumpling into the underbrush. Krozeth roared, his frustration boiling over. "Enough. Face me." The jungle responded with silence. Then the explosion. A deafening blast tore through the ruins, sending a shockwave of dust and fire through the trees. Krozeth stumbled, his vision swimming. His remaining soldiers were thrown like rag dolls, crashing against the rubble. And then she was there. Evelyn emerged from the smoke, a silhouette against the firelight. Her body was battered, her clothes torn, blood streaking her arms. But she was standing, unbroken, a predator in her own right. Krozeth raised his rifle. Too slow. She fired first. The shot punched through his shoulder, sending him staggering backward with a snarl. Pain flared through his nerves, but he gritted his teeth, lunging forward. His claws raked through the air, just missing her as she twisted away. She moved like a specter, always just beyond his reach. Every strike he threw, she was already gone. Then he felt it. The wire. His foot caught the tripline. A crude but deadly trap. Before he could react, the jungle itself seemed to collapse around him. A series of sharpened spikes, rigged from fallen debris, snapped loose from the trees above and plunged downward. He barely had time to move. The spears grazed his armor, piercing through his shoulder, his thigh. Pain ignited through him. He collapsed onto one knee, snarling, his vision darkening at the edges. Evelyn stepped closer, her pistol leveled at his head. "This was never your jungle," she murmured. Krozeth bared his fangs, rage twisting through him. "You think this changes anything?" His breath was ragged, shallow. "We are an empire. We will always return." Evelyn studied him for a long moment. Then she raised her pistol higher. No, her voice was quiet, final. She pulled the trigger. The shot rang through the night, and the jungle swallowed his body whole. Silence fell once more. Evelyn exhaled, the weight of exhaustion settling into her bones. She didn't lower her weapon. Not yet. The jungle was still watching. The night was still listening. But she had won. She turned away from the ruins, stepping back into the depths of the jungle, disappearing into the darkness. The last hunter standing.